Hello, Alan Rowe here, and I've been doing some reading lately, and I wanted to share with you some things I found and did not find. Ooh, what did I not find? Well, you're going to have to watch the whole video. Um, I've been reading about the 1054 schism. Cardinal Humbert, Michael Cerularius, getting a big fight, mutual excommunications, and over 900 years later, the Greek and Latin Church are still in schism. All right, so I wanted to actually read about what happened in 1054. So, what did I get? There are no shortage of history books written by 11th century Byzantines. Let me show you three that I used. 14 Byzantine Rulers by Michael Sellos. The History by Michael Atelier. Well, okay, so this goes from Basil the Bulgar Slayer in the late 900s till about 1078. Then you have The History by Michael Atelietes from approximately the same period as Sellos. And John Scalitzis, A Synopsis of Byzantine History from 811 till 1057. So all three of these histories written in the 11th century cover the year 1054. Now, by reading these three books, what did I learn about 1054? Humbert, Cerularius, and all that stuff. You know what I learned? Absolutely, positively nothing. Because there's nothing about it in these books. It's not mentioned at all, which is weird because you would think this is a pretty cataclysmic event. So, and part of me, now I know what a common objection is that these are not ecclesiastical histories like Eusebius, Venerable Bede, etc. But they are Byzantine histories, which included history of the church, but they also included what was going on with the emperor, all the wars they were fighting, current events in Constantinople and the rest of the empire, and stuff like that. But it does include church history, and it's not there. However, here is something that will blow your mind. All three of these histories mention Cerularius multiple times, doing this, doing that, getting a fight with the emperor, all this stuff. Like he's doing a lot of stuff, but they don't mention him getting in a fight with papal legates leading to a church schism. It's weird. For a while, I was actually starting to believe that the whole event didn't happen, that it was some Latin, like polemic. Then I actually found a Byzantine source that mentions it in passing from the 11th century. It's actually written by Michael Sellos, the same guy. And it's this book's called Sellos and the Patriarchs, Letters and Funeral Orations for Cerularius, Lacudes, and Zephalinos. I'm sure I'm pronouncing all these names wrong. But the funeral oration for Cerularius, I think that's like a eulogy, is 76 pages, and only one page. It's got one page dedicated to the whole fiasco with the Roman legates. One page, and it's kind of like mentioned in passing. And like that's weird because this is such a cataclysmic event in church history, and it's barely recorded by one side. Now, of course, there were two sides to the 1054 schism, the Greek and the Latin. And now, so I decided to look at the Latin sources. The first one, this book, Papal Reform of the 11th Century, has about 4 or 5 primary sources from the 11th century, uh, um, including biographies of Pope Leo IX and Gregory VII. Pope Leo IX, it was his papal legates that was Humbert and had the thing with Cerularius. So it was his legates. And it's got a biography on him in here. And they dedicate several pages to it. It's covered in detail. Pretty clear that it's there. I've got this, the correspondence to Pope Gregory the Seventh. Now, Pope Gregory the Seventh was alive in 1054, but his papacy started a bit later. It was 1073 when he became pope. So he was alive at the time. Now, in a letter he wrote on December 7th, 1054, to Henry IV of all people, he used to be super good friends with Henry IV. They were best of buds. It was like Anakin and Obi-Wan, and it became Anakin and Obi-Wan. I should do a separate video on that because that's fascinating in itself because we know what happened to them. So anyways, the first crusade is in 1095 called, but in 1074, Pope Gregory VII was floating around the idea of a crusade to help the Christian brethren in the East, Christian brethren who are separated from Rome. It says this: I am especially moved toward this undertaking because the Church of Constantinople, differing from us on the doctrine of the Holy Spirit, is seeking fellowship with the Apostolic See. That means they're not in communion. If they're seeking fellowship, that means they're not in communion. The Armenians are almost, and then he goes on to talk about the Armenians and possibly bringing them back in. So he knows that there's a schism in 1074. This is only 20 years later. And the whole episode is covered in detail in another Western account, another Latin account, the biography of Leo IX. So what can we conclude out of all this? The conclusion is the whole 1054 episode, it meant, like at the time anyway, like now, if you're talking to a Catholic or Orthodox in 2024, it's a very important episode. Like, it's like, oh yeah, that's when we split. But if you were to talk to someone in the second half of the 11th century, it meant a lot more to the Latin church, this whole episode, than it did to the Greek church, the Church of Constantinople. Why is that? Well, that's another video. I think I know why. I have theories why. But no, that's interesting. So that's probably something that you guys didn't know. And yeah, I hope you learned something today. Like, subscribe, share this video. And if you've read any 11th century accounts that I'm not taking into account, feel free to list them below. And have a good day. God bless.